A Labour landslide has swept the UK's general elections, ending 14 years of Conservative rule. Keir Starmer will become the new Prime Minister later today. He has promised a decade of national renewal as he replaces Rishi Sunak, whose Conservative Party suffered a decisive defeat at the polls. Sunak has conceded, calling the results a sobering verdict. And we can hear a little bit of Starmer's victory speech from earlier this morning, as well as Sunak's concession.
Tonight, people here and around the country have spoken, and they're ready for change, to end the politics of performance and return to politics as public service. The change begins right here, because this is your democracy, your community and your future. You have voted. It is now time for us to deliver. Thank you very much.
The Labour Party has won this general election, and I have called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his victory. Today, power will change hands in a peaceful and orderly manner, with goodwill on all sides. That is something that should give us all confidence in our country's stability and future. The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss.
So joining us now from Downing Street in a very rainy London, we have DW's correspondent Birgit Maas. Birgit, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak conceding defeat there. What is the scale of this loss for the Conservatives?
Yes, Rishi Sunak is preparing to order the removal then and move out of Downing Street, and we will have, in a few hours already, we will have a new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. It's a historic loss for the Conservative Party. After 14 years, they have lost, and that's the prediction. We don't have all the seats just yet, but it's pretty sure that they will have lost around two-thirds of their seat. So that is the biggest loss they've ever had in the history of the party. And the Conservative Party is usually the party of government here in the United Kingdom. One interesting nugget, that all four former Conservative Prime Ministers of the recent 14 years have lost, all those seats have been lost. So they went to Labour or the Liberal Democrats. These seats have turned. So that tells you really the mood in the country, anti-Conservative.
And is that the big story then from last night? Or are these elections more about a big win for Labour and its leader, Keir Starmer?
I think it's really about the loss for the Conservative Party. So the vote that Labour could increase the vote share, it's actually really, really small. We see that the Conservatives really lost. They lost to Labour and the Liberal Democrats. And Labour, I think, in their campaign were saying that it's time for change, but they also were very, very careful. So they compared it with carrying a Ming vase over an ice rink, so not to say anything too controversial that could sort of swing the mood in the country, just to play it very, very safe and, in a way, almost wait for the Conservatives to destroy themselves. That's how I perceive this.
Birgit, thank you so much. Stay with us. We want to come back to you in just a moment. First, let's take a look at where things stand right now. The Labour Party has raced past the 326 seats needed for an outright majority in the UK Parliament, and exit polls have suggested Sunak's Conservatives will end up with only about 150 seats. The Liberal Democrats have also made significant gains, while the right-wing populist Reform UK Party also set to enter Parliament.
This is a Labour landslide being predicted by
the results were a dream come true for Labour. Early exit polls put them streets ahead and delivered the Tories a damning defeat, much to the delight of these London crowds. As ballot boxes were counted throughout the night, they confirmed voters deserted Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party in droves, many flocking to Keir Starmer's Labour Party. Starmer, who used to be England's chief prosecutor, is now the Prime Minister in waiting. He says the next government's brief is clear.
Change begins now. We have to return politics to public service. Show that politics can be a force for good. Make no mistake, that is the great test of politics in this era. The fight for trust is the battle that defines our age.
Whether people were supporting Labour or simply voting against another Tory term, many welcomed the new political landscape.
Brilliant news. I'm just happy to have got rid of the Tories for this election. I'm so glad.
Cautiously optimistic that we're going to have some competent governance moving forward. That's all I hope for.
I hope the Tories might get a bit less than that in the end. I really want to see the smiles wiped off their faces. And I was thrilled to see Nadine Dorries looking so cross. I guess I was shocked that Reform looked like they're getting so many. I feel like that's really dangerous.
The leader of the right-wing populist Reform Party, Nigel Farage, won his parliamentary seat, his 8th attempt to be elected.
It's not just disappointment with the Conservative Party. There is a massive gap on the centre-right of British politics, and my job is to fill it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
While Rishi Sunak retained his parliamentary seat, he is expected to resign as Prime Minister in the coming hours.
The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss. To the many good, hard-working Conservative candidates who lost tonight, despite their tireless efforts, their local records of delivery, and their dedication to their communities, I am sorry.
Keir Starmer will later pay a visit to King Charles, where he will be invited to form a government, kicking off a new chapter in UK politics.
Let's get back across to our correspondent Birgit Maas in London for more. Birgit, a new chapter in UK politics here. What is Labour promising? And maybe more importantly, how are they planning to pay for it?
Keir Starmer did not promise a revolution. He said, I'm here not as the candidate to be a circus director. I'm here to be your next Prime Minister. And he wasn't promising anything crazy, but more a series of smaller reforms, such as planning reform. He wants to grow the economy. That's his biggest aim. The British economy has been stagnating also in an international comparison. So he wants to grow the economy. He's reached out to businesses. He wants to set out a new industrial strategy, which was welcomed also by business. However, how is that going to be quick enough to change things around? British public services are crumbling. The health system is in a really dire state, and British people will want to have some answers sooner rather than later, whereas his plan is more, how I see it, it's more of a long-term plan, and the question is, can he turn things around in the next 5 years in order to have a second term? However, he will set this out. We're expecting him to take the centre stage in the next 2 hours, and then it's up to him to really enthuse the British people.
All right, we'll be waiting patiently for that moment then. Birgit, while I have you here, I'd like to take a look, if we can, at some results coming out from Scotland and what they're going to mean. The Scottish National Party, the SNP, they've taken a big hit. What can you tell us?
They have taken a big hit, and that's really mainly due to the turmoil within their own party. So Nicola Sturgeon, she was the party leader. She was very popular. She had to resign. So it looks at the moment as though the momentum for an independent Scotland, and Scotland that then also wanted to rejoin the European Union, that this momentum for the moment is lost, and that voters in Scotland mainly defected to Labour, who are really very, very happy about their results up there in the north.
Birgit, thank you so much. Stay dry. That is our correspondent Birgit Maas reporting from London. And let's get a European perspective on the British elections now. For that, we have David McAllister with us. He is a member of Germany's opposition Conservative CDU party and in the European Parliament, where he heads the Foreign Affairs Committee as part of the centre-right European People's Party bloc. A warm welcome to DW. First of all, I'd just like to get your thoughts. What do you make of these results and this win for Keir Starmer's Labour Party?
Good morning. Well, the British people have elected a new House of Commons. The UK will have a new government. I would like to congratulate Keir Starmer and the Labour Party for this impressive victory. And for the European Union, this means that we are ready to engage with the United Kingdom, which is a third country, but an important partner for us. And I believe that we should use this election result to build on the trust and progress we had already made with Prime Minister Sunak's government.
Let's talk a little bit more about the UK's relations with Europe. Britain, of course, has been out of the EU since 2020 after Brexit. Is there any indication that things will change with a Labour government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer in terms of your relations with London?
Well, of course, first, the UK needs a new government, the new parliament needs to be constituted, and then we will wait and see what exactly the Labour government will deliver. But we have had a close look at the election manifesto of the Labour Party, and there are some indications that they want to move things forward. But on the other hand, we have to be realistic. Labour has not promised to rejoin the European Union. Labour has not promised to join the single market or the customs union. It's about trying to improve our relations on the basis of the trade and cooperation agreement. And here there's one example where I think we could quickly get a result. That is in case the UK government decides to return to the Erasmus Plus programme. This would be something I think that the European Union would be ready to engage, just like the UK under Prime Minister Sunak rejoined the Horizon programme. One other point where Labour was outspoken during this campaign is that they want to improve the coordination, the cooperation with the European Union on foreign affairs, defence and security. I think here also there would be willingness on the EU side to re-engage.
The Erasmus Plus program, that's, of course, a study abroad program for students within the EU. Does it seem likely from your perspective that Labour would seek to rejoin that?
Well, Erasmus Plus, the program you just mentioned, is not limited to EU member states. Third countries are also included. So this would be something, of course, the UK would have to pay financial contributions to the overhead costs. But I think this would be something really positive to improve the situation of students and young professionals.
You've also mentioned defence, of course. A big issue in Europe is the war in Ukraine. London has been one of Kiev's strongest allies. Is it safe to say Keir Starmer will continue on that course?
Hopefully so. I think the British engagement for Ukraine has been very impressive, and we have seen such a close cooperation between the EU member states and Britain on this matter. And for me, this shows that I think it was a mistake that the former UK government excluded foreign affairs, security and defence matters from the initial negotiations for the trade and cooperation agreement. And here I believe that a formalised cooperation on these important matters between the UK and the EU could be an important step forward. And this is also what we read in the Labour manifesto. The Labour manifesto spoke about a geopolitical, geostrategic cooperation between the United Kingdom and the European Union. So that's the way forward.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. That's a member of the European Parliament, David McAllister. We very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us on DW.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
And with me in the studio for more analysis of the UK election results, we have DW's Alex Forrest-Whiting. Alex, OK, let's get into the details here. If we can you tell us what else is going to be different under a Labour government from what we've seen from 14 years of Conservative rule?
Yeah, it's quite interesting there, wasn't it, that David McAllister was talking about the Labour manifesto. And I think many people think that that Labour manifesto has been very vague because there hasn't been a huge amount of detail about what exactly Labour does want to do now that it is going to form the next government. What we do know is that they want to introduce £8.6 billion worth of tax rises. So that's about 10 billion euros worth of tax rises, including sales tax on private school fees. So they want to do that. They want to target those people who are non-domiciled, so very rich but not living in the UK, to try to get some money back. But the biggest problem for Labour is that the public finances are in a terrible state. Public services are in a terrible state. And so they're going to have to make some hard choices, whether they're admitting that or not. And they say they don't want to raise taxes, but at some point that is likely to either have to happen or they'd have to make more cuts to public services, which they will not want to do.
Yeah, how are they going to reckon with that divide, right? So they're going to raise taxes. You've said that's in the manifesto.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
a very
to pay
small
for
amount.
more programs?
Yeah, to pay for things. So, for example, they want to increase the number of staff working for the health service, so the NHS, because that's struggling. They want more teachers. They want to also they want to set up a publicly owned energy company called Great British Energy to try to pull that in as well. So they've got big plans, but they really don't have much money and much leeway with how they're going to do that and how they're going to tackle some of those major issues.
Yeah, healthcare, of course, was at the top of voters' minds. We saw in polls as they were going out to vote. I want to talk to you about another key moment we saw in the results from this election, a win for the populist right-wing leader, Nigel Farage. He's claiming to have kick-started a, quote, revolt against the establishment. Do you think he's going to be a thorn in the side of the new government?
He most certainly is going to be a thorn in the side of the Conservatives, and he said that he now wants to take on Labour, so that will be the new government. It's interesting with Nigel Farage, this is his 8th attempt at trying to become an MP. He's finally succeeded. He and his new party did very well getting a lot of votes, but because of the electoral system in the UK, they've only won 4 seats. However, they will use them as much as they can, and I think it is going to be very difficult for both Labour and for the Conservatives now, because he's not going to rest. He's going to keep going. He's going to make sure that immigration, for example, is at the top of the agenda, whether the Labour government wants that or not. That's what he will certainly be focusing on.
DW's Alex Forrest Whiting, thank you so much for joining me in the studio to break that down.